one you've heard already from me is the same or different signs. And it basically, if they're the same sign, when you multiply, you get a positive number, and different signs, you get a negative. That's really, you ask yourself, are they the same sign? Answer is going to be positive. Different signs, answer is going to be negative. And the way you can kind of remember, in case you get tripped up, which one's going to be the positive one, which one's going to be the negative. Difference, different signs, those both sound the same. They're similar, and difference means subtracting in math. So find the difference of these two numbers, you subtract. And so difference is kind of like a negative. And so you can remember that different signs are negative, so that means same sign has to be positive. So that's the first of a couple mnemonic devices. The next couple ones are a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to show them to you just that way you see them. Some students like them, some students don't. And so what we do is we start with kind of a tic-tac-toe board here. And we have good and bad and good and bad. And I think you would agree that good is usually considered positive, bad is usually considered negative. So good represents our positive things, and bad represents our negative things. And now I want to caution you, this is a mnemonic device. It's not a social discussion. I'm not saying this is the way I really believe or anything like that. It's just a way to remember things. So we're not having a philosophical discussion. So we're going to say this is people and this is things. So if a good thing happens to a good person, like let's say a good person finds a $20 bill on the ground. So that would be a positive thing if a good thing happens to a good person. If a good thing happens to a bad person, let's say a robber gets away with stealing something, that'd be a good thing happening for them to this bad person. Well, that would be a bad thing for society, so we'd say that's a negative. If a bad thing happens to a good person, like a good person breaks their legs, we would consider that to be a negative thing, so we're going to say that's negative. And then if a bad thing happens to a bad person, like bad for the bad person would be getting caught. We go back to the robber. If they get caught, that's a bad thing happening to that bad person. Bad for them, but good for society. So if a bad thing happens to a bad person, then that's good for us. So you can remember this. Good thing, good person, bad thing, bad person. Those are both positives. So a positive times a positive is a positive. And so you just look, for example, if a good thing happens to a bad person, so a positive times a negative gives us a negative. So that's one way. It's good thing, bad things, good people, bad people. Well, the next one is a very similar one, but I've heard people say this love and hate. So we start with our tic-tac-toe board again. And we have love, hate, and love, and hate. And again, this is not a philosophical discussion. This is, we're going to say, is positive to love and negative to hate, and love is positive and hate is negative. And so, again, not philosophical discussion, but this is the way some people learn it. Some people like this one. So if you love to love, that's a wonderful thing. And if you love to hate things, that's negative. And if you hate loving things, that's also negative. But if you hate hating things, that's considered positive. And so we have a positive times a positive is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. And a positive I'm sorry, a negative times a negative is a positive. So, for example, if you hate to hate, which is negative times negative, you end up in the positive square. So, negative times a negative. Personally, I find these mnemonics to be just a little bit more complicated than they need to be, but you pick whichever one works for you. Thank you very much.